Hello and welcome to It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi. Joining me today is Umair Pervez, who is co-author of the Future of Work Beyond COVID study that has just been released. He's also the Future City lead for the global Shapers Calgary organization and a manager with PwC in Calgary. Thanks for joining us today, Umair.
Thanks for having me, Mario.
Well, let me just start by asking you, first of all, just as an explanation of what Global Shapers Calgary is, what does the organization do?
Yeah, sure. So we're essentially the youth branch of the World Economic Forum. So we have hubs in major cities all around the world, and we're independently run, and we run different projects to try and improve our city. And so the Calgary hub has about, I believe, 30 odd members right now. And we've run different projects relating to refugee settlement, civic engagement, and the future of work.
Okay, let's talk about the future of work, what the study is all about. So why is the future of work important, especially in today's age?
So I think the discussion about future of work started becoming prominent with the concept of the fourth industrial revolution. And so you may know that we've had, a lot of, we've had three different revolutions prior to industrial revolutions prior to this. So we've had an industrial revolution, which brought about mechanics. And then we had a second industrial revolution that brought about electricity. And then there was internet. So now the fourth industrial revolution is essentially internet-based technologies. And the reason it's so special is because it's said to have an impact much larger than any of the previous industrial revolutions. And it's going to change the way that the way that we work significantly, the way that we behave with each other. And we're already starting to see a lot of this come into effect. So what we're expecting is that with the introduction of these fourth industrial revolution technologies like automation, robotics, cloud computing, Internet of Things, for example, we're expecting the nature of work to change quite significantly. And so organizations, employees, policymakers need to be aware of those changes. And they need to be aware of how they can adapt to them, because we know that these changes are quite disruptive in nature, and that they can, completely revolutionize jobs in a certain industry, or they can completely wipe out industries, as we've seen with certain industries like the photography industry just disappears overnight and becomes digital. You've seen Netflix take over Blockbuster. So instantly you just see complete industries getting completely wiped.
So, why did the organization go through all this extensive research? Tell me, and also just tell me a little bit about the research itself and, what that entailed.
Yeah, sure. So the reason we conducted research on the future of work is because it's important when planning for the future of work. It's important to develop evidence-based policies. And there's been a lot of studies on the future of work. There's a lot of great organizations that have put out research on the future of work, but they mostly look at the future of work from a global perspective or even from a regional perspective. But what we're doing is we're looking at it from a very specifically from a local perspective of Calgary. So what we intended to do was we wanted to conduct the most comprehensive and in-depth future of work survey. And one of the reasons we're doing it now is because we're faced with a lot of interesting changes to the nature of work as a result of COVID-19. So we've basically created a survey and surveyed 800 Calgarians. And we didn't limit ourselves to just executives. We looked at all Calgarians. So we got a diverse representative group of Calgarians to tell us what the current state of work is and where they see themselves in the future.
Mm. So, you touched on it a little bit, but what has been the impact of COVID on the future of work and on the present work?
Hmm. Yeah, so COVID-19 forced us to accelerate the adoption of remote work technologies almost instantaneously. It's had a lot of changes to the way that we work and interact with ourselves. So I'll give you an example. So business travel has completely stopped overnight, right? And that changes how we interact with clients, for example. But it also changes where we do our work. And so that means that I can now recruit people from a completely different city, or I can work with clients and I can pitch to clients in a completely different country. And so it's opened up a lot of options with how we work also. Uh, One of the interesting insights from our survey around the impact of COVID-19 was we also saw the acceleration of automation within Calgary. So there's certain industries that have reported an increase in adoption of automation technologies. And so an interesting thing about this is that we're seeing automation being adopted in high skilled jobs more than lower skilled jobs. And particularly um, the jobs that, contrary to popular belief, people believe that automation will likely replace lower skilled labor. But we're not seeing that in the survey. We're seeing, as a result of COVID, it's more data and analytics jobs or decision-making jobs that are now augmented with automation.
Okay. And in the research and in the study, you call it the Great Reset. Explain that term for me. What does it mean, and what opportunities can Calgary and Calgary business capitalize on this day and age?
Yeah, sure. So the Great Reset is an initiative that was put forward by the World Economic Forum. And what they're proposing is that we have a unique opportunity to reset the way that we do things. So reset all of the systems that we have designed, and rethink them when we rebuild. So what they're urging our business leaders and our policymakers to do is that they're urging them to not try and build the same systems that we had before. So don't work towards building the status quo. And what they're urging them to do is to rethink how can we develop these systems so that they don't have the same problems that were ingrained within them before. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity that we're getting to do this, because a lot of the systems that we knew before COVID-19 hit were very badly damaged or completely broken. And so while we rebuild, we can also reset, right?
Mhm.
And so to your second question, how can Calgarians capitalize on this? So I think Calgary has a unique situation also, in which we're also used to rebuilding. We've been through these cycles of booms and busts, and it's an opportunity for us to build some stability, build some economic stability, and we can do that by um, innovating, by diversifying our economy, by looking at the systems that we have that exist, and seeing the problems that exist within them, and then rethinking them and building them back up again so that they don't contain the same problems that we had to deal with in the past.
Now, okay, Calgary in many ways is a bit of a traditional town. Obviously,
Mm,
we've lived and breathed the oil patch for for many decades. How
right.
difficult is it going to be to make that switch, to make that reset, in especially in thinking?
Yeah, I think it's not an easy thing to do, right? Because we're talking about changing the mindset of an entire city, and so I think you touched upon a really important issue, is that we're trying to change human behavior here. It's not just a policy change or adopting technology. Um, so I think one of the ways that the World Economic Forum suggests that we can do this, or we can start to do this, is we can start to, when we're rebuilding systems, we can start to consider the perspectives of a lot of different stakeholders. And what that allows us to do is it broadens our mind and it gives us a completely different perspective that we were missing before. And what we know from having designed systems that don't work, we know that oftentimes the people whose voice isn't at the decision-making table, they lose the most from the systems that we create. So look for those people and include them in the decision on those decision-making tables. And hopefully we can use that to start rethinking how we create systems and making sure that we don't leave someone behind.
Okay, last question for you. Just when you look at the way Calgary business owners are managing employees today, what
Yeah.
advice do you have for them?
I think my advice to Calgary business owners would be rethink and rebuild. Don't just rebuild. So don't aim to build the same status quo that we had before. We have a chance to reimagine the systems that caused us a lot of the problems and inefficiencies, inequalities, and impracticalities in the past. And we can consider new perspectives of many different stakeholders when designing our policies. So our survey results also showed there's a clear discrepancy between how COVID-19 impacted higher paid Calgarians versus lower paid Calgarians, right? And we know that their personal lives are negatively impacted a lot more. And this is just one great example of how we can rethink when we're rebuilding. So a lot of Calgary business leaders are creating policies around flexible working or well-being. And so when you're creating those policies, keep in mind that not all of your employees are impacted the same way by COVID-19 or by return to work. So how can we factor in those specific needs of those stakeholders? And then I think another thing that I'd want to touch upon is through our survey, we found out a lot of tactical approaches that business leaders can adopt to try and give comfort to their employees. And so a couple of the top ones that we found from our survey was that Calgarians want business leaders to encourage flexible work behaviors and remote work behaviors. There's a large percentage of Calgarians that reported wanting to continuing to work from home, right? And a couple of other things that they can do. We found out from Calgarians through our survey that they would want to know about the possibility of job losses as soon as we become aware, because we know that a lot of Calgarians are living in fear right now because of job losses that have happened as a result of COVID. And they want clear and honest communication from their business leaders.
Okay, super. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, Umair.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Mario.
Okay, that was Umair Pervez, who is the co-author of a new research study that has been released called Future of Work Beyond COVID. He's also Future Cities Lead with the Global Shapers of Calgary organization and a manager with PwC Canada in Calgary. This has been Mario Toneguzzi on It's Your Business. Thanks for joining us today.